Joining us now for the interview is Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She's a key Democratic member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and somebody who lots of people want to run for president in 2020. There, I just put it right out there.
There you go.
There you go. Senator, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rachel.
Let me ask you about some of this Justice Department stuff that we've just been learning about. So a new name has been floated as a potential Attorney General nominee, William Barr, who served in that role as AG for a short time during the George H.W. Bush administration. We've also got some interesting information out of the Justice Department today about recusal and the Mueller investigation. I want to ask you about that too. But what's your reaction to the William Barr trial balloon?
Well, first of all, we don't know if who he's going to put in place. I haven't worked with him. I do think he's worthy of consideration. I am concerned he has said some negative things about the special counsel's office and some of the prosecutors he had in place, but that's all I know right now. But again, what we want to see is a nominee, so we'd like them to put someone forward so we can quickly start interviewing them, get their documents, figure out what's going on. Because right now, we have someone who's a walking conflict of interest in Mr. Whitaker, who shouldn't be there to begin with.
With Whitaker, obviously there's controversy over the fact that he's serving as the acting Attorney General of the United States in an indefinite capacity without ever having come before the Senate.
Yes.
There's also
that's one problem.
That's one problem.
Let's keep going.
There's also his conflicts of interest, as you mentioned.
$1.2 million in which he spent a lot of the time going on TV going after Hillary Clinton. Yes.
Also, he appears to be part of a fraudulent, busted by the FTC scam that is reportedly currently being investigated by the FBI, including his personal role in intimidating people who might have otherwise complained about it.
Okay, that's another one. And then you have, which is very relevant to this, the fact that he said that he thought the investigation was crossing a red line, the fact that he said you could starve the investigation so it would have no money, and then the final thing, at one point he said publicly that he didn't see connections at all that the special counsel had developed between the Trump campaign and Russia. Yet tomorrow, as you so well pointed out, we are going to have kind of a Lollapalooza day where we have got the special counsel's office explaining to us about Manafort and what we think should happen there and why they didn't think they should accept the plea. You've got Papadopoulos coming out of jail. You've got Flynn, that situation where they've issued a report explaining why they thought he shouldn't go to jail because of the fact that he has come forward with information. And all of this is going on at the same time.
Both Flynn and Cohen are going to be sentenced next week.
Exactly. So it's like all these pieces of a puzzle coming together. But if they take out the corners of the puzzle, you don't have a puzzle. And that means keeping Mueller going, making sure the investigation gets completed, allowing for a report if there is going to be a report, and then, of course, allowing for oversight from someone who is not conflicted out, and that would be Rosenstein.
So we've been talking about the problem with Whitaker and the Mueller investigation ever since Whitaker was first named to this job. The thing that has not evolved at all since he was installed in this job is that we still, as far as I can tell, have zero transparency into whether or not he is overseeing the Mueller investigation or not. There's some public source reporting which suggests that he's been back-channeling information to the White House or that he has had some advance notice of things before they become public knowledge. But the Justice Department itself has not told us whether he's recused, whether he's met with ethics investigators or ethics officials at the Justice Department, or what his role is in overseeing this. Is that just the secrecy of the investigative process? Is there something that's proper about that secrecy?
I don't think so at all, because he's supposed to be giving us information. We have asked, members of the Judiciary Committee have very specifically asked the Justice Department to give us information about these conflicts, about if he's recusing himself, what the extent of that recusal is, and we're also asking for a briefing directly from them if they're not going to give us the documents. And of course, we've been asking the same thing about Benchkowski.
And Benchkowski today, thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request.
Thanks to your great reporting.
Well, I just show off what other people dig up. But in this case, we now actually do have an overt statement from the Justice Department that Benchkowski, around whom there were concerns about his own involvement in the Russia investigation, he is recused from everything having to do with Mueller. That's very interesting news. If the Justice Department felt compelled to make that kind of declaration about Benchkowski, does that indicate that they will eventually have to tell us the same kind of information about Whitaker?
Of course. I mean, this guy is serving as the acting attorney general and may for the foreseeable future here, even though we know we have some, I think, lawsuits with merit about the fact that we didn't have any ability to confirm him. Whoop, problem under the Constitution.
Yeah.
And that, number two, they used the wrong statute in putting him in. They should have used this succession statute that would have meant that, in fact, Rosenstein should have taken over as the next in line after Sessions was asked to resign, or you might say fired.
Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, will you stay?
Will I stay on your show? Yes, I will stay on your show. I thought you meant stay through this investigation, which I am committed to do as a member of the Judiciary Committee. We have a lot going on there. Yes,
I will ask you to stay in much more esoteric ways if you want.
No,
but just,
I'm excited.
Just through the commercial. All right, we'll be right back with Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Joining us once again for the interview is Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Senator, thank you for coming in and talking to me in person. I'm really happy to have you here.
Yes.
I also find you to be one of the people who I most enjoy talking to on television about politics, and that has been true since I first met you.
Thank you. I think I was on your show early on. I would go on every Halloween.
Yeah, we did a few
when no one else
a few cat ears
did.
things. Yes, well, many costumes. I think in part because I am biased because I enjoy you as a person, but also as a political analyst, I feel like you have exactly the right profile of somebody who ought to run for president with an expectation that you would do very well both in the primary and in the general election. And I know you've been asked a lot about this lately, but how are you approaching this decision? How are you thinking about whether or not you should run for president?
Well, first of all, I just got off an election, and I led a ticket where we, as you know, had 2 U.S. Senate seats, 1 governor's race, state house, and a bunch of congressional races in a state that Donald Trump almost won. It was about a little over a point difference. And so that was my first obligation. So I had to get that done.
You won by 24 points.
I did, but I had a ticket that I had to get through.
Yeah.
And someone said it wasn't just on my shoulders, it was on my back. And it was really important to win those races. So we did that, and I helped some of my colleagues around the country. So now I am looking at this, but I think things you have to consider when you look at this daunting decision is, first of all, do you want to be president? You have to think about who can win. There's a lot of good people that are going to be running. And then you have to think about this geographic fact that in the last election, the Midwest got left behind on our side. We did not do well. I'm talking not about 2018, where we picked up a number of great governorships in Wisconsin, Kansas, with Laura Kelly and different places. But it is about what happened in the last presidential. So I think it's important to have voices from the Midwest. I think it's important to have people that can win in counties and areas that Donald Trump did well in. I will say that I won, I think, 42 counties in Minnesota that he had won. And I think a lot of this is going not just where it is comfortable, but also where it's uncomfortable. And then, of course, there's a singular focus on getting our own optimistic economic agenda across in a time when you have tweets every morning and new rabbit holes to go down. I think it's really important that whatever candidates are running focus on an optimistic economic agenda for this country. At the same time, we protect our democracy. And the last time I checked, Democrats can do 2 things at once.
And it sounds like you want Democrats to do that. I don't hear you saying, I'm the best Democrat to do that. But from the way you're talking about it, I mean, if that's going to be the agenda, if that's the way to win, both geographically and in terms of the message, then why shouldn't it be you?
Well, I'm considering it. I learned the hard way in my U.S. Senate race when Mark Dayton had decided not to run at the last moment. He was an incumbent senator, and I immediately was asked about it, and unfortunately my husband found out on TV that I was considering doing it, or on the radio, and I'm trying to spare my family that, so I think I'd have to have a discussion with them as well as a number of people I've been working with over the years.
Okay. Well, if you want me to talk to them, I'll do so. Senator.
All right. Well, this is great.
Senator, I have one last question that I want to ask you about that is on a policy matter.
Okay.
And I want to ask you this as a former prosecutor and also as a senator who's on the Judiciary Committee. And it concerns an issue that is it's a crime issue, but it now relates to a Trump cabinet secretary as well. And it's the Jeffrey Epstein case.
Oh, in Florida, yes.
Yes. So there's this Florida case involving Jeffrey Epstein. The current labor secretary, Alex Acosta, was the U.S. attorney when that case came forward in Florida. And the Miami Herald has just done this incredible expose. He gave Jeffrey Epstein a plea deal that resulted in having federal immunity after a 53-page federal indictment has been drawn up against him on child rape and child molestation and all these things. Gave him a plea deal that gave him federal immunity, gave all of his potential co-conspirators immunity as well. And the guy ended up pleading to 2 state charges, doing 13 months in a private wing of the county jail with his own guards, and he got to go home 12 hours a day for 6 days a week. Senator Ben Sasse is the one Republican senator who has said this is an issue the Justice Department should explain that deal, especially given that the U.S. attorney who did it is now a cabinet secretary. How is this an appropriate avenue of inquiry for the Senate? Should the Justice Department have to explain itself? And why is Ben Sasse the only Republican who seems to care about it?
I'm glad that he cares, and of course I care very much as someone that has worked on these kinds of cases and done a lot in the area of human trafficking and sex trafficking. From what I've learned with the Miami Herald reporting and other stories is that this is not just like he said, she said story. This is as one of the police chiefs said, this is 50 she saids and 1 he said when it comes to Mr. Epstein, who was convicted, but as you pointed out, served such a short sentence. So that was strange. The other thing that's strange is the victims were not even told about the sentence. In my state, you have all kinds of requirements. You don't seal an agreement like this in nearly any case because you want to consult with the victims before you put the sentence out there. It's law in most cases. So I think there is a very good reason to figure out what went on here and why the U.S. attorney at the time, and this was back during the last Bush administration, it's 2007, George W. Bush, why this happened. And I think it's meritorious of review, and I'm glad Senator Sasse and a number of us on the Democratic side agree that we should be looking into this.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, one of the most pragmatic senators in the U.S.
Well, that's because
in the U.S. Congress.
Common ground, the only way you can get to higher ground. And that's what we need to do as a country. Well, we just haven't been doing that lately, except at the George H.W. Bush funeral. We did it for 2 hours, and that was good.
Senator Klobuchar, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
When you make a decision, you let me know.
All right, thank you.
That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow. Now it's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Lawrence, I'm sorry I ate a minute.
Oh, no, Rachel, I wanted you to use that because we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein's case later in this hour. So Senator Klobuchar's information on it and her take on it was very important for everyone to hear. You know, I saw Senator Klobuchar in the hallway downstairs before she went on your program. And so I asked her one question. And it was this. It was a very simple question. I just wanted a number. I just wondered if she could give me the number of Democrats who will run for president. And she couldn't. She tried her best, but she couldn't narrow it down within, say, 20 or so.
What's your best guess, Lawrence?
I think the number might begin with a 2. I don't know. I do not know. That's why I asked Amy Klobuchar.
I agreed with him.
She just said she agrees with you. I will say the one really good news about this is that when it comes to building the debate sets, it's going to be lots of union jobs building stadium seating style podiums for everybody who wants to get in on all those tiers.
Well, good night, Senator Klobuchar, and good
Lawrence.
night, Rachel. Do we have a 2-shot there? We got okay.
Yeah, come on, here, bring us over. Come on, okay.
There we go.
Can you do it?
There we go. They're there. They're really there.
There you are.
They're really there.
Over there. There we go.
There. Finally. We have 2 panicked control rooms with that. Thank you very much.